So Naoya Inoue does what we're kind of becoming a bit guilty, I think, of just expecting from him time and time again. He becomes undisputed at 122 pounds now, and I kind of got what I wanted, which was a bit of a trickier fight, at least some kind of resistance, where you could maybe give Tapales a couple of rounds, maybe, and more so just throughout the fight there was a degree of resistance, of not caving in, of switching up his own tactics, being a bit ballsy at times with that uppercut which I'd spoken about. Not a cupcake, as Paulie Malignaggi would say, and definitely did himself proud before the inevitable stoppage. Now, regarding the stoppage, there seems to be a little bit of confusion as to what exactly landed here. There were two right hands, the first of which looked like it hit the forearm and really drove Tapales back, just showing you how much raw power Inoue has. He throws a second one, and there's a camera angle from the side that does show it landing on the temple. And it was just one heavy right hand too many. This wasn't the perfectly timed catch-you-coming encounter, like against Payano, like against Jason Maloney. It was just too much. And as Tapales was on the ground there on all fours, it seemed like he really couldn't get control of his legs anymore. Of course, glad he's doing well. Prior to the fight, Inoue had spoken about how he anticipated a bit more of a tense fight than the one against Fulton. It seemed like he did approach that fight with a little bit more care, that he was looking for the smarter shot. Now, maybe Inoue just felt the best game plan here is to walk Tapales down, and going off the fact he did end up stopping him, you'd say it was a pretty good game plan. Though he did get a little bit more touched up here, maybe than in other fights. Was he putting himself unnecessarily in harm's way? Or was it the fact Tapales is kinda awkward and tricky, and he holds his cards quite close to his chest? He leans back, he looks at what you're doing, then he's aggressive, then he's quiet again. He is hard to read. Of course, it was orthodox against southpaw, so there was a little bit of a clash with the lead feet. Probably a bit more than you'd want. Inoue wasn't always getting his left foot around Tapales' right lead foot, and in the manner in which Tapales, of course, leans back, it seemed like there was always quite a distance between them to bridge, even when they were standing right in front of each other. You have to ultimately give Tapales credit for making Inoue work for this one. He looked fantastic on the scales. He had every reason to be confident having beaten Akhmadaliev, and now you're going into a fight in which there's no pressure, you're expected to lose. They're the perfect grounds for an upset. But I do kind of feel, talking about pressure now, maybe part of the reason why this performance wasn't quite as clean as the one against Fulton is that there's undoubtedly this pressure to perform with Inoue. He wants to get the stoppage. His nickname basically promises you a stoppage. So much so that the next time somebody takes Inoue the distance, there's going to be a little bit of disappointment there. And probably even from myself, this is what you become so used to. And so when we see Inoue just continually walk up to you, sometimes being not quite as defensively savvy as we'd hope because his mind is just on brutal KO counter, you can't help but think, look, he's obviously feeling the pressure that a stoppage here is basically expected. Now, the fact he did get the stoppage in a fight that looked like it might have been going into distance territory, like the fight against Fulton did perhaps after the 7th round, like it certainly looked like the Butler fight was going to go, Inoue manages to find the shots again to win in the most impressive fashion. That gives you brownie points. And more so, when this conversation now about who's fighter of the year between Crawford and Inoue, they seem like the two prime candidates. One of the big factors for the argument for Inoue, it's not just that he's fought twice, it's that he's beating prime fighters. I remember Eddie Hearn when he was banging on about just how short a fighter's career is. They need to hurry up, they need to make money. Well, when it comes to a fighter's prime, that is typically very short. Sometimes it can even be for one fight, and then they're never the same again. Hence why it is so important that when it comes to your most deserving rivals, as soon as that fight makes sense, you've got to make it. Otherwise, it's just going to be losing value. And so, yeah, Crawford Spence, the main criticism against it is that we let it hang out to dry for a little bit. With Tapales, with Fulton, both in their 20s, both coming off good performances. As soon as the fight makes sense against Inoue, boom, it's made. Of course, Inoue deserves all kinds of respect. If you want to have him fighter of the year, if you want to have him pound for pound number one right now, it's certainly not a stretch. It's a close run thing either way. But because this is still in the lower weight divisions, because I've made the point before in other videos that unless you really get to featherweight, the casuals aren't as arsed, you hear some really silly things. Antonio Tarver, a guy whose opinions I normally find myself nodding at, has said something really daft about Inoue, saying maybe he shouldn't maybe even be top 10 pound for pound. Like, we need to wait. We need to see him go further. This is always the language of people who have no clue about the lower weight divisions. They're late to the party, as they were with Roman Gonzalez, so they just assume that they haven't been fighting anybody. Inoue has been a world champion now, in the world class, for about 10 years plus. And so we forget that there's mileage there. As dominant as he's been, he's 30 now. He's not a spring chicken, and he's already got a very substantial body of work. If you're not aware of that, then don't go sounding off. Yeah, of course, we'd love to see Inoue against more of a named fighter that would make the whole boxing world take note. But let's slow everything down here. Destroying Omar Narvaez. The wins over Donaire, first time round. 36 he was, not 40. Manny Rodriguez, Stephen Fulton, now Tapales, and plenty of other guys, and it's all been so dominant. That is a tremendous resume. And it sounds like, which I'm quite happy to hear, Inoue is just going to stay at 1-2-2 for a little bit. If we can have the same schedule we had this year, yes, I prefer 3 fights a year, but if you have 2 meaningful fights, then okay, I'll take that. There is talk now of maybe fighting Akhmadaliev. That would be tremendous. We want to see a guy cleaning out divisions. That has its own greatness. You don't need to keep ridiculously pinging overweights like Pacquiao did. Inoue is going down his own unique path. MJ, as his nickname goes, only lost to Tapales by split decision. So if Inoue could register what we always expect, a stoppage over him in the first half of 2024, setting him up for what, maybe Casemiro, Luis Neri, somebody else, another good opponent. He is just going to keep adding substance onto this already very good record. But what did we all make of the Monster's performance? What do we make of Antonio Tarver's stupid comments? Like, really? If you don't know about a weight class, why comment? Loads of boxing fans only really know from about lightweight upwards. They try and say something about the lower weight divisions because maybe they don't like them, and they completely expose their own ignorance. It's better just to be quiet. I'd like to give a shout out to everybody who does watch these videos and particularly leaves comments. Some people leave really good breakdowns, interpretations, things for me to think about, maybe reconsider my own position. It's not the biggest channel, so I do check what everybody says, and it is appreciated. Bottom line, Inoue looks like a monster again. If not quite as brilliant as he's been in other performances, that's where we've got to give credit to Tapales for being so tricky and spirited. If 2024 is going to bring us Akhmadaliev, I am definitely going to be happy with that.